Can Nebraska stun Purdue for the second time in just over a year? We're previewing Nebraska at Purdue today. We're going to dive into the numbers, the key players, and a comparison between both teams. Hello and welcome into the Cornhusker Huddle. I'm your host, Brian Moore. Nebraska was in a very similar position just 367 days ago, 1 year and 2 days ago. Number one Purdue was traveling to the vault, where Big Ten teams go to die. Nebraska stunned Purdue. They stunned the Big Ten, and they stunned the college basketball world. This time last year, Nebraska was very similar. They were 12-2 on the season. I think they were 3-1 or 2-2 in conference play. Nebraska has a chance to stun Purdue on their own court this time around. Let's take a quick look down memory lane.
Into it, Heights chasing him, fires and scores! It's unbelievable! And the Huskers are going to go to 13-3 on the year and to 3-2 in the conference. And you hear the Go Big Red chant.
Get this ball in bounds.
Nebraska knocks off the top-ranked team in the country, and they are storming the floor. They are storming the floor. They are storming.
Oh, how beautiful that day, that night was in Lincoln, Nebraska. Everyone remembers thinking we had no chance in that game. That was the game that put Nebraska on the map. That was the game that said Nebraska is a tournament team. Nebraska had their opportunity against Iowa to prove they're one of the best teams in the Big Ten. Nebraska choked that game away. Can Nebraska put everything behind them? Throw it all out. Doesn't matter. This is a new day. It's a new challenge. And it's at 20th ranked Purdue. They're 12-4 on the season. They're 4-1 in conference play. Their only loss being to Penn State, which, I don't know. Penn State's okay, I guess. But they're on a 4-game win streak. They've played 5 top 25 teams. They're 2-3 in those top 25 games, but they've played in tough games against tough opponents. Nebraska, on the other hand, has played 2 top 25 teams, and Nebraska is 1-1 against top 25 teams. Can Nebraska go 2-1 against top 25 teams? Let's stun Purdue one more time. Let's keep stunning Purdue. But for now, let's stun them again. Let's go to their home court. Let's shock them. Let's come out and play aggressive defense. Protect the perimeter, because Purdue is not your Purdue of old. They're not your Purdue of last season. They don't have a big guy in the middle like Zach Edey. They have a guy that comes in off the bench that's 7'4", but he plays like 13 minutes a game. He doesn't make a real big impact in terms of offensively. When you're 7'4", you're going to make an impact defensively. You're going to protect the paint. You're going to rebound. But this is not a dominant center like we've seen. He averages like 6 points a game. So is he a threat? No, not to me. Not to me. We've got a 7'1" guy. Nebraska has Andrew Morgan, who's 6'10" or so. They got Berkte Buchtengel, who's 6'9", 6'10". Depends on who you ask and where you get your information from. Nebraska has depth at the center position. We can handle that guy when he comes in for his whopping 13 minutes a game. But what can we do to stop their primary scorers? Their primary scorers are forward Trey Kaufman-Renn. He averages 17 points per game. He's their leading scorer. He also averages 6 rebounds per game. That leads the team. He shoots 60% from the floor. He shoots 43% from threes. Purdue isn't a three-point threat per se. They have 5 guys shooting over 40% from three, but they're not Iowa. They're not chucking up threes left and right. They don't have a bunch of guys that think they're Steph Curry. Braden Smith is the other guy to keep tabs on. He averages 15 points per game. That's second on the team. He averages 5 rebounds per game, and this is incredible. 8 assists per game. He dang near averages a double-double. He shoots 44% from the field. He shoots 42% from threes. In the last 4 games, he's averaging 23 points a game while shooting 51% from the floor. His three-point percentage has dropped a little bit, but it's still 38%. That's just the last 4 games, though. One more guy to keep tabs on would be their other guard, Fletcher Lawyer. He's their 3rd leading scorer, and he averages 13 points per game. But he shoots 45, just over 45% from 3, which is best on the team. Nebraska has 2 guys over 40%, and they've got 5, and 3 of them are in their starting lineup. Bryce Williams is our best 3-point shooter in terms of percentage. He's like 42, 43% on the year. And then we have Connor Esiason, who's like 41, 42%. Nebraska is going to have to slow down their threes, but they're not a team that's making 10 or 12 a game. They're right where Nebraska is. In fact, let's pull it up. Let's pull up the comparison between the 2 teams. We'll post it somewhere in this vicinity. Both teams average 77 points per game, and I would actually probably, and you can fact check me because I'm not 100% certain on this statistic, but I think Nebraska at 77 points per game, this is probably the highest scoring offense in the Fred Hoiberg era. 77 points per game for Purdue. That's typically where their average is. They're in that 75 to 85-ish range. The scoring margin, Purdue averages +8 on their scoring margin. Nebraska's +10 on their scoring margin. Both teams shoot the ball well from the floor. Nebraska's at 49%. I'm sorry, Purdue's at 49% and Nebraska's at 46%. From 3, Purdue's at 38%. Nebraska's at 34%, which for Nebraska, the last year or 2 with Keisei Tominaga, that percentage is actually lower than what it normally is. Purdue makes 8 threes per game. Nebraska makes 7. Nebraska and Purdue are really close in a lot of these statistics here. Turnovers per game, Nebraska's at 12 and Purdue's at 11. Here's where I hope Nebraska can take advantage. Look at the possessions per game and the extra possessions per game. Nebraska gets 72 per game compared to Purdue's 67. That's not a huge difference, but it can make the difference in a game. What does Nebraska do with those extra possessions? Purdue's actually negative on possessions per game, and Nebraska's positive in extra possessions per game. Nebraska's at 1.6 and Purdue's at minus 1.9, dang near 2 less possessions per game. Offensive efficiency ranking, this is a little confusing to me. Nebraska's got a solid offense, but they're ranked 101st and Purdue is ranked 30th. Opponents' shooting percentage, Nebraska wins this column as well. Nebraska's at 39% opponent shooting percentage. Purdue's at 43%. Opponents' points per game, Nebraska slightly edges out Purdue here. 67 for Nebraska and 69 for Purdue. Opponents' 3-point percentage. Purdue's at 32nd. Nebraska's at 41st. Nebraska did take a rather sizable jump down after that Iowa game, because Iowa was, 52% from 3, I think is what it came out to be. In fouls per game, Purdue's at 15 and Nebraska is at 16. This is going to be a battle. This is going to be a close game. Here's the one thing that concerns me. We've already brought it up in our last video when we talked about Nebraska's colossal failure, colossal choke job at Iowa. Dating back to last year, Nebraska's 2-11 on the road. Purdue's 8-0 at home this season. That's not an easy place to play. Purdue is coming off that 4-game win streak that we talked about. Can Nebraska make the adjustments necessary on defense to slow Purdue down. I think Nebraska has an advantage because we've got arguably the best player in the Big Ten with Bryce Williams. Nebraska has the advantage because our bench depth is substantially deeper than theirs. Purdue does not have a guy coming in off the bench that's averaging more than 15 or 16 minutes per game. Nebraska has Connor Season playing over 20 minutes per game off the bench. And they're efficient minutes, as we've talked about many times. Nebraska is always, it seems like, plus 15 to 20 when Connor Season is on the floor. Nebraska has Sam Hoiberg coming off the bench, and he's played 23 minutes per game. Nebraska has Andrew Morgan coming off the bench. He's actually playing more than the starter, Braxton Mia, who plays 17 minutes per game. Nebraska has a deeper bench. Can that bench propel Nebraska to beat Purdue? Can Nebraska defend the perimeter enough to beat Purdue? I got Nebraska in a stunner in Purdue. Let's go. Go Big Red.
Nebraska knocks off the top